New details about that second grand jury that's been meeting in the Trump classified documents investigation. Sources say that this jury, which is based in southern Florida, has heard testimony from multiple witnesses in recent weeks and is set to hear from at least two more witnesses. Let's get straight to CNN's Kristen Holmes, who's breaking this for us. Kristen, so this is in the same jurisdiction where the search warrant for Mar-a-Lago was approved. Tell us more.
That's right. So what we know so far is that this grand jury has been meeting in a courthouse in Miami, and they have recently heard, as you said, from a number of witnesses. They are expected to hear from another witness in this investigation into the classified probes tomorrow. And after that, at least one more witness. Now, what's not clear is why exactly they have this second grand jury. And I talked to a number of sources close to Trump who said that they were also unsure why this grand jury was convening, why they were hearing the case. One thing to note is that Jack Smith has the authority as a special counsel to operate and bring charges in any jurisdiction. So this is completely within his purview. Now, as you mentioned, there was the court that signed off on that search warrant for Mar-a-Lago was in the Southern District in Florida. The other thing about that that's interesting is an assistant U.S. attorney from the Miami Bureau was present when that search was executed in Mar-a-Lago. And one thing to bring up here is that there have been questions about venue since before the special counsel even took over this investigation, because it dealt with taking documents from the White House to Trump's Florida resort. So that has always been up. But again, it is still unclear why exactly they have convened this second grand jury, why they why they are bringing witnesses in front of the second grand jury, Jake.
All right, Kristen Holmes with that breaking news. Thanks so much. Let's bring in CNN senior legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Elie Honig to talk about this. Elie, up until now, we've only known of the one grand jury in the Trump documents case, the grand jury here in Washington, D.C., but now we're hearing more because of our great reporters about multiple witnesses testifying to a grand jury in Florida. What could that mean for this case?
Well, Jake, it's a really interesting development. I see two broad possibilities. One is this could be a convenience measure. If there are certain witnesses who can't or won't travel outside of Florida, what you can do as a prosecutor is take their testimony in a federal grand jury down there and then take the transcripts and just read it to your main grand jury in D.C. The other possibility is prosecutors could be examining the possibility of charging this case down in the Southern District of Florida. They would have the ability to do that. Prosecutors, when you have a crime, you have to charge it in one of the districts where some of the criminal conduct occurred. You do have some leeway as a prosecutor, but you have to get it right. If you charge in the wrong district, the case will get thrown out.
So theoretically, could it be some sort of criminal charge, and I'm just speculating here, some sort of criminal charge having to do with holding the documents improperly in Florida, and then the obstruction of justice charge in Washington, D.C., something like that? Would they charge in two different jurisdictions at the same time?
Theoretically, you can do that, but I do not think prosecutors would do that. That would be a practical and logistical mess. You'd then have two cases in two different courtrooms. You'd have to have two trials going on at the same time. I think prosecutors are going to have to essentially decide, are we charging this in D.C. or Florida? Now, the advantage to D.C. for prosecutors, let's just be real here, Donald Trump is very unpopular. He got 5.4% of the vote in D.C. in 2020. The jury pool is going to be way better for prosecutors in D.C. But venue is clearer to me in Florida because that's where the documents were kept. That's certainly where the obstructive acts occurred. And so if they charge in D.C., they do run the risk of not having the proper venue here, which is a very high stakes risk.
Although you could argue that if they get an indictment in Florida, it will have more credibility because that's a state that Donald Trump won twice. We know Trump's lawyers met with Justice Department officials yesterday. Did defense lawyers ever succeed in changing prosecutors' minds when they have these meetings? They're obviously trying to convince them to not pursue an indictment against Mr. Trump.
I would say rarely, but not never. There are times when prosecutors already have their minds made up, but you still give the defense lawyer the meeting as a professional courtesy. But there are cases where it's a close call, where a powerful, persuasive, substantive presentation by defense lawyers can convince prosecutors not to charge or to charge less serious conduct. I'll tell you, there were times when I was persuaded as a prosecutor, but if I had to put a number on it, I would say it's in the low single digit of percentages.
All right, Elie Honig, thanks so much. Appreciate it.